So I get with the first part of what you said. I was thinking you were starting to say something, and then you went on, and then you actually counteracted it. My idea. Um, so you think there are still creative wells that we can tap?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. Both in, like I said, in a more academic sense, like figuring out what it is to be a fetishist from that angle, and like more polls and research into understanding the community. And then from like a pure creative entertainment standpoint, types of content we can make. I got us into podcasts, but what's the next sort of thing we can do? People have been dabbling in games for the past couple years, but
Many years,
nothing's really
actually.
taken off. Yeah, but by games I mean like full on video games. On Steam, somebody made like a wedgie simulator. They called it kind of recently.
Well, there was also
Um,
the one with the redhead in the classroom.
yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Very
Yeah.
basic.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, so yeah, and I assume that one was made by a fetishist. That was like a bully one. You could do different bullying
Yes,
techniques, right? Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking
without
about.
getting
Yeah.
caught by the teacher.
Exactly, yeah. So yeah, for the last number of years, but not super recent, I mean not super old, I should say. Sorry, in more recent years, we've been seeing a trend into video games. And but what can we do in video games? Like obviously, you know me, I'd want to see full-on feature-length films about wedgies and things that are like cool narrative-driven stories. Like that's what I want to see, the 8 episode Netflix series about the
Yeah.
fetishist and
Get
then the
the
hot
get the
cheerleaders who are
get the
turning them
full
on and stuff.
get the
I
full
want all that.
get the full length
Yeah.
movie of Lucy and Daniela.
I want the full length adaptations of all our stories. The easy in to some of that is like audio versions of them, and because anybody could record them, although it's probably better if it's a hot woman's voice doing it, in my opinion, than like if it's me and my like weird voice going like, and I am the wedgie her, and everyone's like, oh please stop, please I can't listen to this.
Yeah.
But so that's an easy in. There's obviously any so much of that innovation is still there. There's so much potential, and I struggle with figuring out like what else can I do differently. Like I've done these different experiments, but I'm always wondering like what's another experiment I can do? What challenge can I put to the content? And I know some people are very against that sort of thing. They're like, why are you trying to like complicate it, or why do you want to write a story that doesn't have the letter E or where every word starts with the same letter? It's like because I want to see what else we can do with it, and I want to try something different, and I want to find out what other creative avenues and wells do exist, like you said. And some people are like, "No, we're good. Just keep with the wedgies, and we're happy." I mean, I'm like, "No, we need to experiment. We need to do different things." So yeah, it's probably almost unlimited what we can do with the community. Maybe NFTs is the next big thing or something. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah. Minting an NFT would not be hard to do, but
No,
well,
wouldn't
so
be
I
hard.
mean, you kind of, I feel like you were on both sides of the fence there,
Mm,
um, in terms of what kind of content, because I feel like there's creative content, and then there's what I think of it as meta content, where you're looking
okay.
at the community from not really an outsider perspective, but from an, I guess, sort of an analytical perspective, sort of like
Yeah.
what I do with this podcast. I feel like that's meta
Yeah.
content.
Sure. I like
And
that
what
way of
Indoor
describing.
Stereos is planning to do. I think that's meta content. Um, yeah, okay. Um, and what I'm
Yeah, I think
hoping.
there's potential in both, and meta content, which I love that word for it, by the way. That's a really cool term to describe it.
Yeah,
Is obviously rarer, much rarer, and we hinted at why. It's because the what you need to understand about the community and think about it is like a business model almost, and but the business we're in is in turning on readers. That's one of the main drivers of this. Even if people don't really understand that or know they're doing it, if you're writing it to turn on yourself, which is often what writers end up doing, it's going to be turning on other people. And when you share the content, that's one of the main sort of things that happen and the drivers of it. So yeah, when we think about it and the idea of like, but how many wedgie fetishists are there, and what kinds of content they've been putting out, and these insights about the community are obviously very rare. Um, so I'd love to see more of that, just in general, and an understanding of the community from the sort of trends and insights angle. Um, which is why I love things like your amazing podcast, because you dig into a lot of that, um, and I always love stuff like that, as you know. So definitely that, and obviously from a creator entertainment standpoint, it's basically limitless what you can do. Um, and we're always, it seems to be, finding new ways to do it. Video games is the latest, but after that, who knows? Maybe VR, AR. It really is crazy.
Yeah.
If we ever take off like 50 Shades of Grey did for BDSM, maybe we will get some feature length movies or some content deals for all us creators. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe. That, yeah. And the who knows is really a great
Yeah.
segue into the next question. Where do you see the fetish in 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, so when you ask about the fetish, do you mean like the community, or you mean like
Both.
the
Both.
okay, so like generally what's gonna happen with the fetish?
The
So
fetish and the
this has been
community.
yeah, so this is a question that comes up kind of often for some of us who are interested in the meta aspects of the community. The question that sort of revolves around is like, are we going to see new wedgie fetishes come in? Or was like the period that I was describing when I was coming up with the cartoons of like Fairly Odd Parents and stuff, which is coming back with a live action adaptation soon. So maybe we'll see more wedgies. Who knows? Fairly Odd Parents, Fairly Odder, it's called. Maybe we'll see more of that, but will we? What if we don't have shows like that? What if, for whatever reason, the amount of fetishes dries up, and with that, all the sort of creators now start retiring? What's going to happen to the community and the fetish? Because they are intertwined and fundamentally connected, obviously. I can't really say. My thought is, and the one I've sort of stuck with, is that we have seen over the years that new members keep joining, new people keep finding the fetish, and I'm not entirely sure how or why or what's driving them. Maybe it is the same thing that's driven so many of us. It's seeing different cartoons than we saw. We're just hearing about them, or I guess they're still popping up in series for younger audiences as they were when we were younger. And so perhaps we're always going to have new members coming up. That's what I like to hope. My hope is that there's always going to be new members coming in, and as a result, we're going to have just a general improvement over the years in terms of the types of content we're putting out as the older members do more to innovate and inform the younger users and the new users, if that's the right term. I guess community members is probably a better one. About what the history of the community is. Like, hopefully, the new members find your podcast and are inspired, is what I would really hope, almost more than anything else, and they learn about some of their history of the community and what they're a part of, and they come to appreciate it on some deeper level than just like, oh, I'm into this thing and that's about it. Bye. I don't want to be a part of this anymore, which we often hear because people are like, oh, I'm struggling with this. I don't want to be this way anymore. I don't think that's how it works. Um, but maybe it is, because we do see people come and go, right? I'm sure you've seen plenty who are like, oh no,
Yeah.
I don't like this. I don't want to be this way, so I'm gonna go later. And then you're like, wow, that's really sad.
Multiple
Um,
recently.
yeah, multiple recently. And they come and they go, and it's sad and it sucks. I used to get really pissed about it, and I would try a lot of different things to try and get them to stay. I would even at one point result it to being like, well, then just go. Like, anger, I thought was going to get them to stay. And I pissed off like one person doing that. I did it like very rarely. But I was like, fine, if you don't want a beer, just go then. Why are you making a post about it? And now I'm just like, if they're going to go, like, they want it to mean something. Like you gotta be patient with them, young Hans.
Yep.
But yeah. So, but my hope is there's always going to be new members, basically, to sum up, and always going to be new content that comes in. And in 5 years from now, when we do another episode like this, my hope is like, yeah, you saw that great movie that they did, that great series of animated episodes that they did that someone made, and it's so great, and we're innovating, and there's new sites, and people are trying different things, and people are making money, and is awesome. That's what I hope to see, and I feel like that's sort of where the trends are pointing us in some ways. More monetization, more growth, um, and just generally things getting better, I guess, in some ways in the community.
Yeah. What about yourself in the community and outside of it?
Wow. Yeah, I hope to be in some ways more active, like more up to date with what's going on across the sites. I hope to have written a lot more. Like there's stories I'm passionate about that I've sort of let drop. I know when I was like younger, I was so cocky. I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm never gonna let a story go unfinished because I hate unfinished stories." But I mean, now if you look at stuff like many memories of wedgies and things, which, like I mentioned to you in the Lucy and Danielle episode, like I still have very clear ideas of where that story could go, which is pretty
Yep.
crazy to think about. And if I can do it right, that'll probably be the best thing, like way better than YW&R, because I'm gonna have cool twists, and it's gonna be like a Brandon Sanderson story, and it's gonna be
Uh-huh.
epic fantasy with a magic system, and the antagonist, you're gonna come to like her because she's gonna have all this like reveals about herself, and it's gonna be an amazing story. So like there's stuff like that I hope I can get back into. Even the other day I mentioned you, like I found again the Lucy and Daniela interactive story notes I had in Twine, that file. I popped that back into Twine just to see. My hope is I'm innovating more. I'm trying different things. Um, in like the next couple years, the next decade of me doing this, I hope I can have a like I'm not resting on my laurels, and I have like really cool hits that people like. I mean, the thing with me, I like to think more than like some of those super popular writers and like the Arc Times, the Magnipoles, who obviously heroes to me. I love them. It feels like, and especially even ones like the Anti Cherries. Like I've been active, pretty active for the last decade, which is a very rare feat when you think about it
Yes, it
in
is.
the community. So I do have that going for me. I'm not the best, as I've said, but I am one of the most like prolific in that over a decade I've been relatively consistently putting out content, and now like a decade after I started, I'm still writing these super long novels, and I haven't just disappeared, or I haven't pulled a oh yeah, I'm done with this, bye sort of thing. So I'm hoping like I'm still active and I'm still doing that, and I've found new ways to improve the community. Like I launched the community wiki. Well, actually it was long ago now, but I've only been updating it recently with some new pages, and it's so dead. Please join the wiki, everybody. Just a shout out. Join it, add some pages. I hope to just keep improving the community however I can. Improving myself, like as a person too. Like I feel like I can do a better job responding to people quicker on DA, being more detailed in responses. Like I kind of, and I'll admit it, I could have done a better job in the last contest that I ran in terms of like how it was judged and everything. I dropped the ball on that. I apologize to people who were disappointed in how that went, and that's fair. And I hear you, and I could have done better. So working to improve in how I am and how everything goes with the projects I run. I feel like I've got a lot to learn, and I'm glad people are in the community are giving me a chance to keep growing and improving and learning.
Nice. I think I'm gonna know the answer to this question. What's your favorite wedgie?
Oh yeah, you know the answer to this
I
one.
know it is.
This is
I
an
know what it
easy
is,
one.
but I gotta let.
Yeah.
I gotta. Everybody else has to know
No, it's true. It's
because
atomic.
it's the
Definitely.
best. It's the best
It
one.
is. Yeah. No, it's classic. And if it's done right and it's not rushed, it's obviously just the best because it is this epitome of wedgies and humiliation, and
Yeah.
it feels like it captures the build up, which is what we want, and humiliation, submission, domination aspects, which I think are so key to the fetish. Although others argue they have nothing to do with it, which I think is fascinating as well. Yeah, definitely atomic all the way. Easy,
Yes.
easy.
100%, 1,000% agree with you, and it absolutely should have won the debate
Yeah,
episode.
it should have won, but I'm
Should
glad
have won.
others thought so, and they were like very confused, and I
Yeah,
just went, yeah, yeah. There's sometimes you can't win it all.
even though Atomic is the best, objectively.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
what about type of underwear?
Yeah. Oh, type of underwear?
Yeah,
That's my
yeah,
favorite.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, sorry. I like the nerdier sort of granny panties, definitely in stories.
Oh shit.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're falling
yeah,
in line with our
definitely,
tastes then.
totally. Yeah, and
Um,
I've written a ton of that stuff, and I know like more recently, Shao Melder's sort of like, oh, I'm not a huge fan of that term, granny panties. I'm paraphrasing him, obviously, or things, or he wants like more realistic pairs, which makes a lot of sense. And in stories like Dulling a Knife and Flame Over Darkness, it makes perfect sense, and it's definitely made the stories better having them. But yeah, there's a part of me that obviously like from the Lucy and Daniela days, those super stretchy
hmm
granny panty like underwear that obviously was like permeated that story and a lot of stuff I've written.
Yeah, and I do
Definitely,
wonder if
definitely
that's.
a
I
favorite.
wonder if that's a small factor into why I consider it one of the best, the best.
Probably, yeah. The underwear choice in stories and underwear. I've
It's
mentioned
just,
this. I think kind of recently. I was talking about how the visual aspect of the underwear is such a key thing, right? Because when you're a fetishist reading a story, what you're looking for is to be able to picture it as clearly as you can. A
yep.
visual stimuli that like the male
hmm
brain craves, like I mentioned. Psychologically, we know that to be true. Again, I mentioned I preface that saying again, I'm not a psychologist, but that's what I've heard is that the male brain. That's why we love videos and we gravitate to
Yeah.
videos, or when we're reading a story and we need to picture it visually in our mind. So if there's something you really like hearts on the underwear, that sort of thing, or
Good
those very
stuff.
cartoony, yeah, exactly, it was very cartoony but very easy to visualize details that help build the picture, like very simple things, what it looks like, what
hmm
their facial expression is like, and things. It's things you maybe don't think about, but as you examine the community on a deeper, almost meta level, and your own writing is what is it that people actually like in these stories? What can I include? It's those very small details that hit on the senses. If you can nail those, you're going to more creatively create a picture that fetishists can look at and go, oh yeah, I'm liking everything here. I can very easily picture this scene, and therefore it's going to be easier for me to get lost in it.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, Designs are plain.
Yeah.
Gotta follow this
Yeah.
train of questions.
Yeah. Oh, so in stories and reading, again, like you can tell my tastes, as well as being like a fan of like like not hardcore, but intense, like domination, submission stuff in stories. I obviously am a fan of the sort of cartooniest aspects of the stories and the fetish. So definitely some designs are great. Obviously, like I hadn't thought of this too much, but in the case of like Lucy and Daniela, like the Spider-Man underwear is obviously like really creative and colorful, and I like that. But like
Yeah.
even anime panties and some of the friend sessions stuff he does. Obviously, sometimes it feels a bit too on the nose, like Lucy, the nerdish character whose name is probably we've established inspired by Lucy and Daniela partly. So yay, use
hmm
Lucy and Daniela. Um, uh, she wears like underwear with like microscopes and science symbols on it and things, and that's great. Like I remember that, right? Even though I haven't read the parts of the story with that, I remember that very clearly. And I think that just gives you another aspect to latch onto with a
Yeah.
story, something creative, and it's different too, right? The goal of writers should be to be different. And again, it's not something we always think about too often because it's easy to fall back on sort of cliches and what's familiar. But in trying to be different, a pretty easy way to do that is to think of some different pattern or different design or something of that nature. But no, I love all that definitely a lot.
Yeah, 100%. I like that our tastes in wedgies and
Yeah,
underwear are pretty much the same.
yeah, we're simpatico.
Yes.
Bros for life.
All right. Stepping back a little bit, what do you get
Yeah.
up to when you're not consumed with wedgies?
Great question. Yeah, in case people think I have no life beyond this. So, like I've hinted at, I'm a journalist in my day job, so a lot of writing. I've hinted at this before too, but I'll briefly say like I work for a business to business publication covering global kids entertainment news. So I'm very busy like
I just
around.
thought of something.
Yeah.
Keep going. Keep going.
Uh, yeah. So I do that in the 9 to 5, Monday to Friday life. And then I've gotten into gaming a lot more. Like I mentioned, big into reading. Grew up watching a ton of movies and TV, so I'm a big cinephile, watching a lot of stuff. Um, and things like that. I'm also kind of interested in learning more. Like I suck at things like math, but I'm weirdly like maybe I could learn how to do math. And weird things like that. Like recently, I was like, what if I learned how to play an instrument? Like I used to when I was younger, play a bit of guitar, but I haven't in many years. And I learned a bit, but like I didn't get too far with it. I was like, what would be a very easy instrument to learn? I was looking up to that like the other day, and I was like, oh, recorder seems easy. And then I realized like you have to use your tongue, and my tongue is like very weird. Long story short, it's like very small or something. I don't really know what the problem is, but I was like, nope, recorder's out. No instrument learning for me. So I'm always like trying to find out new things. Is the point I'm like trying to make, um, and like just finding new things I can do and stuff. So when I'm not like working in the job or like trying to keep up to date with the community, it's like hanging. A lot of times I've been hanging out with my good friend Shadow Melder too, doing a lot of gaming. Obviously, I'm hooked on Elden Ring right now, playing a ton of that. It's the best game ever, by the way. Everybody
No,
should
it's not.
play it. It's great.
It's not the best
Well,
game
you
ever.
play it. You play it, and then you tell me if it's not
I
the
will
best
tell you
game
what
ever.
the best game ever is.
What's the best game ever?
Gemcraft.
Minecraft is great. Yeah.
No, not
So I don't know.
Minecraft. Not
Oh, I think it's
Minecraft.
Minecraft.
No,
Oh,
Gemcraft.
Gemcraft. Okay.
Yes.
Sounds like a lamer Minecraft. No, I know Gemcraft. Yeah. That's fair. Fair.
It
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
It's the best. That is the best game ever.
It looks cool. Yeah. I haven't played it, but I'll take your word for it. I'll play it, and we'll do an episode on what's the best game ever. That sounds fair.
Yeah, well, I would absolutely recommend it. I'm
Yeah.
I'm definitely not a fan of the Dark Souls type of games. I've tried to play them, not my cup of tea. That is one thing in video game. That's probably the number one thing in gaming, not just video games, but gaming. Like Magic the Gathering is my favorite game of all time,
Yeah.
and that's why I kind of like gaming in general. Um, that is the number one thing that the number one thing that I hate in gaming in general is losing consistently, and
Oh yeah.
that is one of the hallmarks of a Dark Souls
I
game.
get you. Yeah, it
So
sort of is, and
I
obviously the
guess really of
people
a
who
Souls
love the
game.
games. Yeah, yeah. The people who love the games will argue that that's the point because when you do win, it means so much, which I do get. For a long time, I was
I can
100%
understand
with
that.
you. I was 100% with you, and I didn't get Souls games at all. Like I ended up stumbling into playing them. I was like, I bought it like a Shoppers Drug Mart, which I think for Canadians, you know what that is. You Americans might not. It's basically like a local
Nope.
like drug store. They also sell like groceries and stuff. And it's not a place to buy video games really, but I was like, I found Dark Souls 3. I was like, this looks fantasy esque. Let me play this game. I couldn't get past the first boss. I'm getting whooped. I'm like, this is not right. Video games shouldn't make it this hard. I don't understand this. I'm getting killed. So I didn't really get it for a long time, like long time. I didn't really play it. I put it down, and then Shadow Melder was the guy who got me into it. Ended up with him. It's obviously the games are way easier if you play it with a friend, and in some ways more fun. Um, but then I won't go too long into this because this is not the Dark Souls podcast. This is the Wedgie how much Hans Gutherson loves them podcast. But I'll briefly, and I'll try to, if I'm clever enough, try to tie this into the community somehow. But I learned through sort of playing them more with him and understanding what they're doing. I gained a much deeper appreciation of them, like in Dark Souls 2, which people consider like the worst of all their games. And for some reasons, for very good logical reasons, they have. But I got the whole thing that they do in the Souls games, which is they don't just give you the story. You have to like read all these item descriptions while you're trying to not get killed by hordes of enemies, because that's obviously easy and fun to do. But I got it when I was exploring one of the DLC areas. I was like, wow, I'm actually uh, like a historian, like a sociologist studying the history and learning the history of this lost like city in
Hmm.
one of the DLCs, and I really got it. I was like, I understand this now. Like, no one's gonna tell me this lore because no one knows it. I'm the only person that I'm learning it as I'm going, as I'm finding items, I'm exploring. So that was cool. And then yeah, like the adrenaline you get when you finally beat like a boss, and when you have these really cool cinematic fights. And then obviously, yeah, it's gonna piss you off when you keep losing. Like that's inevitable. But a part of it is getting used to that and being like, why am I losing? What am I missing? Is this a gimmick fight and I'm missing something? Or do I just need to do I need to level up? Do I need to go somewhere else? Get some item that's gonna help me with this fight. So it's like thinking a bit differently about gaming, which is partly I think a slight inspiration for me in the community. It's like thinking differently about the content creation process, about how to tell stories. Obviously, it's not like I'm not as huge a fan of it as like people who played. I played Bloodborne. I guess I played like basically all their games at this point. Like Sekiro, I didn't really get into much, but I've played them because I want to be more of a gamer and stuff. But definitely like I see what they're doing, and I can definitely take some hints from like some of the story beats they're hitting and the creativity of some of it, because they did do a lot that's very different in games, and a part of that is like, how can I be the Dark Souls of the community and changing up the formulas.
Hmm. Yeah, and also just looking beyond what's already there to
Yeah.
find out the true meaning and the understanding beneath.
Yeah, I think it's also important that yeah, sometimes the things you think are right, like you realize like aren't. Like for me, I was like, nah, these games I don't like them. They're not great. They're too hard. And it's like, nah, I was just looking at difficulty wrong. I had a different idea of like what that meant to be difficult and why it was difficult. I didn't get that. Like that was part of the experience. So like a mind shift, and I think being able to learn from things as you go, not being so set in your ways, is something I still struggle with. Like you know me, like when people suggest like, oh, I want to do a podcast about this in the community, I'm like, nope, it's got to be this way. It's got to be the way Hans says it is, and that's it, because Hans knows best. But I mean, I don't, right? And so being able to change my own viewpoints and become more open to different things, I think is just going to be beneficial for me as I grow, because my growth in the community I think should be tied to how I grow as a person, and I think it's going to be because I like to spend so much time here doing so much.
Yeah. Yeah, especially since so many of us that are so active in the community, our identities are in some way linked to the fetish.
Yeah, well said. Well said.
I laughed earlier.
Yeah.
Um, it is kind of funny to me in an oxymoronic kind of way,
Yeah.
um, that you're so against underage content and at the same
Yes.
time you're a
Yeah.
journalist for kids content.
Yeah. It
It's
is
just
funny.
funny to me.
It is funny. And AP, who's seen articles I've written and stuff, one of the first sort of stories I wrote was about a kid's property called Little Baby Bum, and he saw that. He's like, "How inappropriate! Look at Hans Gutherson talking about underage content." But that's a very popular brand on YouTube for like
Yeah,
preschoolers.
right.
So, but yeah, so it is a bit funny, and one of the most surreal and uncomfortable experiences in my journalism career was when a company came to me saying they're adapting a book called Wedgie and Gizmo, I think it
Oh
was called.
God. Oh God.
So I had to like sit in this interview with them talking about it, and I was ridiculously uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like even in real life, like I say real life, like outside of the community. When I was in like high school, like my last year of high school, I was in like a philosophy class, and that was the year that the news came out about the guy who
Oh my
killed
God.
his
Yep. Yep. Yep.
dad
Yep. Yep.
with an
Yep.
atomic wedgie. And then what I quickly learned, because I was like, he can't have done that. What it was is like he hit him on the head with something after he had given him a tongue wedgie. So it wasn't actually a wedgie that killed him. For so you guys know. Um, but the whole class, like the teacher had a thing. Great teacher, by the way. This was one of my favorite teachers. He had a thing where he would mention things in the news that were going on in like the wacky world or something. And so he mentioned this, and the whole class, including some many hot girls, were laughing and talking about this thing. So I was just sitting there, head down, staring at the floor, totally uncomfortable. Like one of the most uncomfortable experiences of my life. Like
Yeah.
I can't say a thing. I don't know what to do. I can't even almost can't even breathe. So like it was kind of similar with the journalism thing where I'm like the business of kids journalism is like what are companies like Mattel doing, Disney, like what new shows for kids are going on Netflix, and I need to be able to. That's why with you here, you probably got the vibe of like, man, this guy's all about like detailed insights and concrete, because that's what I'm trying to get from like the content producers and the executives from these major companies that we're talking to every day,
Hmm.
from around the world. So I try to bring that into this. I think that work I've done in real life has had a big part of like how I try to view the community when I talk about trends. That's stuff I've only thought about since I've had to think about business trends and what that whole shift looks like. So yeah, it's been crazy in some of those cases, like that surreal experience of writing that story and things where Wedgie was like a character in it. He was like a talking dog or something. It was a book adaptation, so that book exists. Um, but yeah, that was weird. In most cases, it's very much just like very straight up business, and it's obviously no connection to the stuff I'm doing. But yeah, it's a funny little parallel to think like I'm writing about like these shows for 16 and unders, maybe slightly older content, movies, toys, whatever, licensing, all that business stuff. And then to think, obviously, yeah, within the community, I'm like, and EP asked me at one point, he's like, did that change your view on underage content? And I basically just
No.
said like it made, of course not, like it makes me even more
Yes.
determined to make sure it
Hmm.
never appears in stories ever,
Yeah.
because like the people who make kids content obviously are very passionate about educating and entertaining children and
Yes.
doing that in the best ways possible, and they're people I talk with all the time. So like to have then the idea that like we're gonna be sexualizing minors, like obviously it gets to me even more. So but yeah, no, it is definitely fair to you to get a chuckle out of that, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, it's the two aren't related at all. It was
No,
just a funny
no, it's
thing
funny,
to
it's
me.
funny, yeah. I think I shared with you some articles, like I've interviewed Arnold Schwarzenegger. I've shared that with you,
Yeah.
um, which was I guess the highlight for my family of my journalism career. And I did that really kind of early on in the company. I've only been there like just over 3 years now. I told you I was promoted to news editor beginning
Yep.
of this year, so
Yep.
it's been pretty fun. So when I'm not writing fetish stories or in the community, I'm busy with that and living my life.
Nice. Um. So I mean, you talked about like the class where, and that the news story where the guy
Yeah,
kill quote unquote kills his dad
yeah,
with an atomic wedgie
yeah,
is
yeah.
such a memorable experience for people that were part of the community at the time. I remember when it came out and
Yeah.
people were all over it. Even though the fact that it was content, it was like this is such a extreme thing that actually
Of
happened
course.
in
Yeah.
real life,
Yeah.
that I thought really could only happen in a story that one of us wrote. Um,
Uh,
did you
yeah.
have any? Have you had any other experiences where wedgies came up in real life?
Yeah, a handful. Now I think I've shared before in when I was, I guess, elementary school. I was in Boy Scouts, and I did see, and I think this was probably a kind of big-ish factor in developing the fetish for me. There was some girls who would give them to like this one guy. He would get a couple. And it got to this point where I was kind of like, man, I wish they would give me one too, not like this guy who was like the brother of like the one girl who was giving him. He was like his brother, so it probably makes sense why she was doing that. And like I said, I tried to manipulate them in some cases with a relative, so I did get some out of that for a while, and I was able to get some that way through kind of elaborate schemes. Um, that I can go into or not, whatever. And so definitely that was something. And in high school, there was, I don't know, not many. I think one of my first days of high school, there was some girl or something who was like, "Oh, I have a wedgie or something." I was like, "Wow, this is the place to be. High school, my dreams come true. Like this is amazing." First day, someone's already talking about wedgies. This is amazing. And I do recall some bully I think gave one to a guy after he was like picking on him or something. He gave one. I was just sitting there like, kind of, again, pretty uncomfortable. It was like, this is bizarre. Let me get away from this because I want to like end up getting one and what that's gonna look like. Because in real life, wedgies aren't like, it was a very
Yeah.
small sort of thing he was doing, and I was just like, nah, I'm out of this. So I've a handful of times, not in recent years, at all have they come up, really, except, well, obviously, when I was in the relationship with my now ex in the infamous Hans breakup, which inspired some very dark and sad stories. Prior to that, I had the almost like surreal, dreamlike experience of being in this weird and probably not great. Where before I got with who was then my girlfriend, I had this other woman, and this was in my last year of university, who was like trying to seduce me because she also knew about my fetish. So I would like write something to her, and I'd be like, "I want to
Oh,
do this to you," and she would talk about how turned on she was because of it, and how much she wanted to like do wedgie stuff. And then I get with my girlfriend instead of this girl because she's also into it. So I basically, the point is, I have like two women who are like saying they're into it and they're into me and they're kind of cool with the wedge stuff. So I mean, like, it's a crazy, like, that can't not have happened. Hans is definitely lying sort of experience, but it actually happened. It was crazy, but it obviously turned out really badly, and my ex was pretty crazy. It sucked in the end, big time. So I guess I had like a good period before I paid for it big time. But yeah. So like there, I obviously was able to give some to my ex. Well, she was my girlfriend. It was very hot, and things like that. But uh, yeah, beyond that sort of more recent stuff, it hasn't in the last couple of years. Nothing. It's been dry.
yeah. Yeah. It is always tough to know if the woman that you're interested in is actually into them or they're just saying it.
Yeah, I knew pretty much she wasn't into them, but I thought she was into me, and then it was a whole thing. We could do a whole episode on the whole breakup and how I think she has histrionic personality disorder
Yeah.
and what that is, and all this stuff, and how I was like one dude in a pattern of guys who she was playing the same game with. But
Hmm.
I don't think anyone wants to hear about Hans's love woes and
I'm
all that nonsense.
I'm interested. I've never heard anything about it, but that can be a discussion for a different time.
Yeah, if you
Um
read my story, just like a wedgie, you'll see some of her in that, and a lot of that relationship. Because I was really difficult for me. She was like my first real relationship. Like I said, I've been slow to develop and get into these things. Like I didn't lose my virginity till like, yeah, last year of university or something, and that was with her and stuff. So, um. Yeah, it's just a lot that so probably I was immature and not prepared in some ways for relationships. And
mhm.
I struggle now with the question of like, am I now prepared? Someone who just likes wedgies and think that's all I like. What happens when I'm with someone who needs more than that? And I sort of try to tackle that in my story. No Wedgies Tonight, which was inspired by
Yeah.
AP's story prompt idea. So, like, I mean, it's something I struggle with is a question, and I don't know. I hope I will, as I grow older, I'll learn these things about myself as I meet new people and new women I'm with or new partners, etc. that I grow and I come to understand myself. I at the time knew very little about my sexuality. It was my ex would ask me like, "What are you into? What do you want to do?" I'm like, "I don't know, wedgies. Like, what do you want to do? I don't know. There's stuff I can say and I can have what I want." So obviously, like a lot to learn still, and that's a part of. I think that's a theme. Hans has a lot to learn, but that's okay.
I mean, we all do.
Yeah, that's
Um,
true.
what advice do you have for new or aspiring creators or anyone who isn't sure about starting? Pulling a question from your podcast.
Yeah. Wedgie Talk. Listen to the episodes. Yeah, listen to Wedgie Talk
Yep,
episodes. That's my
definitely listen
advice.
to
Read
that
all
one.
my stories. No, but I mean, seriously, you gotta have confidence in yourself. You can do it. That's the thing you have to understand. Like, way worse writers than you are going to be very popular and have become very popular in this
Yeah.
community. So you're gonna do just fine no matter what you put out. Even if you write "I am a fish" 1,000 times, as my a very influential grade 8 teacher would say, you're gonna do just fine and have very few problems. You're gonna get super popular. There's such a demand for content, as like AP would say, and as the cliche in my industry, as I write about, they love to say, such a demand for content that you can't go wrong with just writing a story and giving it a try and seeing what you think of the whole process and if you enjoy it and if you like it. Uh, read lots of stories. I've always given and been quick to give lists of my favorites, but if you don't know where to start, but there's so many writers who can inspire and encourage you because they can show you different ways to write, different themes and topics to hopefully get you motivated and to write as well. So that's a great place to start. Is just in writing and reading more. Sorry, I should say. And then yeah, just give writing a shot. You don't need to share whatever you write if that's something you're worried about. What are people gonna think? Maybe just give it a shot. And if you're not even at that point yet, don't worry about it. Just think up ideas and try to scribble them down. And if you have some ideas, just write what that idea is and maybe some thoughts about it, to really sort of get your mind working and thinking of ideas and to sort of reward yourself for thinking of ideas and writing them down. I think that's going to make it a lot easier for you. And don't be afraid to be inspired if you want to write some fanfics of my stories or other stories. I think that's a fine place to start just to get yourself writing. But no, you can do it. And if you ever need help or advice, hit me up. I'm
Or me.
here try and teach. Yeah, NeufAtora. That's the thing with the community I hinted at. There's so many people who are, in my experience, even the biggest names are only like a send note on DA away from giving you very detailed and helpful advice on writing and their process and their tips for doing it. But don't give up if it seems a little hard at first, because it is. It takes tremendous effort, and you're not alone in that. But if you give it a shot and if you try, you're going to do great stuff. And at the very least, I'm going to be on there right away, faving you and commenting and telling you you're great because you
Yeah.
are. You're
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. The success doesn't come immediately
No,
99.9999999% of the time. It
no, it
takes
doesn't.
it
And
takes
even if
perseverance. You have to keep going, you
exactly,
have to keep writing, you have to keep producing content, and
yeah,
eventually the success will come to you.
yeah. For me, it's been a grind. Like I hit 400 watchers on just the strength of the writing alone, but that took like years,
Yeah.
right? Which is very slow. And then people who put out art, who nowadays we know how to build popularity quicker. We've seen like the Between Two Cheeks do it with putting out art consistently as well as a huge shortcut to it. So we know these things, but I mean, even if you do that, success is kind of relative. Are you putting out?
Yep.
Are you at 1,000 watchers? Is that success for you? Do you want to build a business? And the transition from saying you put out a lot of art and you have a bunch of watchers to now pay me for content that's going to be work. That's going to be
Yeah.
effort. That's going to be time spent marketing because you're going to want to get more audience and you're going to want to figure out pricing. So it definitely it is work. And even if you just want to build an audience on DA, it's because like we said, there's so many people on there competing. It's not going to be easy. It's not easy for me. And even if you look at recent stories like Flame Over Darkness, which are still a hit, it's like are the numbers are the numbers as big as what other stories have gotten or past stuff I've done and things. So it's success is always going to be tricky in this
Yeah.
community. So don't be sad or be upset if you don't get the numbers you see other people getting. You're gonna inspire people regardless. If one person reads it, good chance you've inspired one person in one way or another.
Yeah.
So hold on to that.
Yeah. I guess that kind of brings in the question, really, how you would define success.
Yeah, it's a great question because, as you know, it's something, and we've already touched on that a lot, and you've asked great questions to draw it out. Obviously, um, for me, it really was from the beginning getting external validation because I always felt like I needed that. I didn't have that. I could give myself validation, so I needed other people to do it for me, which is part of the reason for the longest time, and then even to this day, I view popularity as a zero sum game in that if other people are popular, it means I am not, and that to be popular, I must be the most popular, or I am not popular at all, or not popular enough, which is obviously pretty foolish. Like 1,300 watchers and counting on DA is popular and more popular than a lot of people. Even the way I phrase that right there is me falling into the old trap of look how popular I'm, better than everybody else. So that's a factor of success for me, and I'm often trying to like qualify my success when people do get me on podcasts and I'm allowed to, and I slip and I start being like I'm the best. I'll throw the things like, yeah, I started a podcast trend. Yeah, I've done this hosting of contests and I've experimented and I've been the most prolific. I've been the most blah 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 blah. Look at me. That's all like a factor of success. It feels like being able to say like, look how great I am. At the same time, I love that I've grown enough to be able to learn that success is more personal. It's feeling good about the stories. It's realizing, like, yeah, with Flame Over Darkness, Dulling a Knife, Shadow and I wrote awesome stuff, and I feel like I wrote really good stuff,
Yes, you
and
did.
people really, really enjoyed it. So, like, I've been able to grow to that point, and success is like really being able to put out a good story, which when for some people it's like how many views have I gotten, and that was me for a while. It's like, oh, I haven't hit this number of views, and partly I'll be honest again, like with Flame Over Darkness, I was telling Shao like, yeah, I want to hit 20 faves on each part because I know people are reading it and people are liking it. So there's always that aspect of like, yeah, I want it to be obviously accessible, and by that I just mean like if people look at it they can say, oh yeah, people like this, and I can throw it in the numbers and say look at all the many people reading it, because that's a very obvious marker of success. But then at the same time, yeah, do I come out of the story like I'm liking it? If that weren't the case, I would be probably putting out a lot more really bad stories and just being like, look at this great story by Hans Gutherson. But it's why I'm not putting out like a story a day or something. Because I mean, I do struggle with new stories. I go, I start something, oh no, I'm not feeling this. It's falling flat. It's not flowing. Things like that. So I feel like I've definitely evolved beyond just a numbers game, which I still sometimes play, but I've definitely gotten better at. To the point where success for me is, am I happy about the story? Do people actually, are they commenting and saying they like it? And do I really enjoy what I put out? It is the sort of cliche of like, write what you like and then that's what matters. And I mean, in a way it's not particularly helpful for writers because they're like, what if I don't know what I like, or what if I also want other people to like it too? um, but at the same time, yeah, I've been able to find like through doing it that creating this content that has these psychological themes and hitting on things and speaking to the theme of what it means to be a fetishist that I've been inspired by since the days of Luckily Unlucky. Like that resonates with people. People who then come and they comment to me and say, "Yeah, I know I never thought about a Wedgie story in this way." And so being able to tell myself like I've done these accomplishments and I've helped do something to the community that I hope is positive, even though there's probably always going to be people on the sites like the Reddits and the experience projects of the future that are going to have no clue about Hans Gutherson or any of the stuff I've done. There's going to be people who do, and I've become content with that and content that I've written some good stuff, but not content enough that I'm going to sit on my laurels. Gotta keep pushing, gotta get the next big hits.
Absolutely. I think right now is a good place to take a break, and we will be right back. And we're back. So I only have a couple more questions. The first one is, do you have anything in the works that you can share?
Yeah, I'm always working on some things. I got a couple short stories I'm working on. One that I think went on the Patreon I did with Anime Panties before, but I can't even remember, and I'm adding to it a bit. So either way, it'll be kind of a new story when it ends up on DA and different short stuff. I'm hoping to get back into some projects that I've dropped, like Many Memories of Wedgies would be a really good one to continue, and even the Lucy and Daniela interactive story would be a good one that I reopened the Twine file on and saw like, oh man, there's progress, but not enough. And the thing with me and interactive stories, and a lot of times with stories, it's like scope creep. I go, oh, I need to add more, and I need to add all these elements and interactivity and all this stuff, and all of a sudden I'm like, wow, this thing is way too long, and I have no progress at where the wedgie. So those are some things on my plate. Shadow Melder and I are still building the game we hinted at with Flame Over Darkness. We've taken a short pause from that because of Elden Ring, but that's something we made a ton of progress on. It's basically in like demo stage where people would soon be able to start playing it, or we're figuring out how we exactly want to roll that out. Like maybe we do like a trailer for it potentially and show like some gameplay of us playing it or something. Um, so a lot of stuff on the plate. Lots of fires going, but it's
Yeah.
been good, and hopefully in the near future, rolling out a lot more.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I definitely would not be opposed to helping you with the Lucy and Daniela story if it gets too much or too expansive for one person to keep
That would
track
be
of.
great. Yeah, it could do exactly that. Yeah, so I feel like with interactive stories, like I've always felt like it would just be smarter in a lot of cases to have someone else write parts of it, because you could have like totally different storylines, and it was sort of what we have on writing.com, where you can find some wedgie stories, including some I think by Sasita under the
Yeah.
name Alv. I'm pretty sure that's him.
Okay.
Uh, but like I did a little bit of that writing. Like I did a DC one with Supergirl, and I wrote like super like long parts. Um, at one point of a story and things. So but in that case, the model is like anybody can continue stories and they can create new paths, and typically a lot of them suck or they don't go very far.
Yeah.
But like ideally, if you had like a really good writer with you, they could write some paths and you could write some, so no one feels overwhelmed. Like, oh, I have created three choices, and I have to write three totally different stories until they converge and stuff.
Right.
Having someone be able to like piggyback off of you and tackle some of that work, I think, to me
Yeah.
is always something I'm like, yeah, if I could figure that out and get somebody to do it with me, awesome.
Yeah, those interactive stories on writing.com, like especially like the paths that are actually really well written, and you're like, where is this gonna go? Then
Yeah,
it says next chapter, next chapter. Wait, there's no next chapter, and you don't
yeah,
find out until you get to it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's painful.
Yeah.
And yeah, the whole rating.com thing is annoying for me because like even if you manage to like look at the whole outline of the story, which you can sometimes do, sometimes it's like you get kind of far, but then if you don't have an account, they block you from
Yeah.
going further. And even if you have one, it's like you need to pay. It makes me sad.
Yeah. Oh, I can't. I don't know how many times now they've emailed me after I've told them
Oh
to take me
yeah.
off of my list, and I've supposedly deleted my account. They still send me emails as though I'm still active on the website for some reason.
Wow. There's no
It's
escaping
annoying.
writing.com apparently.
Just create a new email address, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. Are there any creators or content that you want to spotlight?
Yeah, there's always some great stuff on my radar. I know I listed a bunch of names that are new and I really like. Always want to give a shout out to some of my favorite people like Shadow Melder. We co-wrote two stories together, but he's got a great catalog of stories, including Nightfall, which is great. And he just opened up commissions, so everybody should
Hmm.
go and order a commission from one of the best writers in the community. Super great guy to work with. I've commissioned him before. He's always super quick, super communicative. Sometimes you try to get work from people and you don't hear from them for like a month, and you're like, "What's the deal? I just want my story." That's not gonna happen with Shao Melder. He's awesome. Highly recommend him. I've brought anime panties out of retirement, sort of semi-retirement, with new stories from the Patreon we launched. He posted live streamed wedgies, which blew up, and I'm hoping very shortly he'll just keep spamming more stories. In which case he'll just blow up like nobody's business. He's just gonna do bonkers numbers. Definitely check him out. Great friend of mine, obviously, since day one. And then yeah, always check out the classics. Like I say, the ones I probably bore people talking about all the time: the Anti Cherries, the Nicely Done's, the Cosby reruns. These
Hmm.
guys who super influential to me. I think you can learn a ton from them as well. And check out Fortunate Events. It's a great story.
I don't know if it'll ever be done. Who knows? Um, I mean, hey, if people are bored with them, then they're not gonna have the next episodes to look forward to then. Because I would like to start talking about those old stories. Because I think we did it with Karate Friends, but there's other ones. There's so many others that we got to talk about.
Yeah, so many. So many.
Yeah. Uh, so one final thing to leave this episode out on, and it's an obvious thing to you and I, but not to everybody in the community. So I'd like to discuss it a little bit and just say what. So basically, I'm curious why why underage content actually is bad, because we both know it's bad. We both know why, but not
Yeah, yeah,
everybody
yeah.
does. And we
Sure.
people constantly like we're constantly saying it's bad, but we're not saying why. And
Yeah,
I think
not
that's
really.
key to understanding
Sure.
um,
Yeah, totally.
and accepting it.
No, and it's a fair question. Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. And I know I sort of hinted at the argument people make for it, but I realized thinking back, I feel like I probably got hard to understand. Like I was kind of just speaking in very like up in the air terms. So basically, the thing with underage content that people have to understand, and the way I've always viewed it, is what we're doing at our core is sexualizing minors, and the reason it's bad in the community and the reason it's bad outside of the community is that these people of a younger age don't have the capacity to actually give consent.
Legitimate
So,
consent.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it becomes complicated in story format, obviously, if people are like, yeah, but it's a story. But I mean, what we're doing then is we're basically creating like pedophilic art for people to get off to. And you say, oh, but I don't mean to do that, and whatever, whatever. And like I'll try to put the argument that people for underage content make in more straightforward terms, but basically what you have to understand and what took me a while and I think takes some people a while is that with the content, what you have is that no matter what happens, if your story's good and you have wedgies in it, you're going to be turning on your readership. So if you put underage characters in them in almost any capacity, even if they're not like connected to the wedgie, if they're just around, they're seeing it. If you have them there, people are going to be getting turned on by what you're seeing, and they're going to be turned on by the presence and these underage characters who are there. So right there, it's like you're sexualizing minors. You can't get out of it. You can't separate those two things. So that's why I say just don't have them in. Period. The people for it who argue for it, they say, yeah, but it's like if you're in a toy store and you have a toy and someone's going to get turned on by that toy, that's not our fault as a toy maker. Like we can't control what people get turned on by basically. But I mean, we know as writers who our audience is. It's wedgie fetishists who want wedgies and are going to get turned on by what we write unless it sucks. In which case they might still get turned on by it. Which is kind of sad, but so no matter what happens, like if you write underage characters, you're going to be turning people on with them. And I mean, yeah, it's basically enabling pedophilia, basically, in some ways. Um, and obviously, we all know that's not good. We don't want to be encouraging people to create more, especially when we get into the area of like art and stuff. People then creating art of underage characters and again encouraging, like, it's just a cycle that would continuously grow, and we'd see more and more stories and art. And then eventually, if you want to simplify it, could be a slippery slope potentially of videos and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Probably wouldn't go that quickly or that easily, but definitely something you could potentially see, especially just if it's totally in stories all the time and people are getting turned on by it. Definitely an issue. I
Yeah.
hope that sort of answers the
No,
question.
absolutely. I think you just elaborate on the answer. It really just comes down to the sexualization of minors. It's,
Yeah.
I mean, first and foremost, anybody who is of age, it is kind of a weird thing when you first turn 18. Like a couple days ago, it was perfectly fine, and now it's not. But especially as you get older, like the idea of minors in sexual situations is disgusting to me, and it should be for everybody. Um, it's just
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I mean, obviously it's going to be this weird, tricky thing, and people say, yeah, but what about in other states where the age of consent's younger, or what about in other countries? Age is relative, like all these arguments that they definitely clearly want underage content, and they
right.
clearly want to like sexualize these minors and stuff. But so I mean, at that point, you just have to say like the standard within the community is 18, and we
Mm-hmm.
have good reasons for that because legally that's when many have decided you can actually make informed consent, like you said. So at that point, just don't go below that. And it's
Yeah.
not like that prohibitive a rule. Like, why do you
No.
need like little kids in your stories? Like,
Yeah.
don't be between two cheeks, like, and have like a playground, not even playground, like a daycare story where they go to a daycare and there's a bunch of kids. And he got lambasted for that story, right? Like, people don't want to see it at this
Mm-hmm.
point. Like, he was super popular. If anybody could get away with it, you think it would be him. But he got lambasted for the story. He deleted it. And then he said, he was like, oh, I deleted it because the character arcs weren't matching for the characters and stuff. And we're like, no, you deleted it because everybody was saying don't write underage characters, and you had a ton of them in that
Mm-hmm.
story.
Yeah. Yes.
So
Yeah. It's like, even if it's not the underage character is not part of the event. It's they're there, so the association can be made. It really is.
exactly,
It's just um, in case someone finds the thing and they actually are turned on by it. It's like there's no reason to even give people a chance to find it.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just say they're 18, or
Mm.
in some cases, you don't even need to say how old they are. People are gonna assume
Yeah.
they're of age
Say you're a
unless you
senior in
do
high
something
school as
weird.
the lowest. You gotta go.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
totally. That's
I,
fine. What do you want? Or
all you got to do is you search for psychological studies of the brain and the makeup of it, the composition, and the development. Even at 18, people's brains aren't fully formed, but
true.
I guess it's been deemed that they're formed enough that
Hmm.
they can make some kinds of decisions. Um, but I don't know. I mean, like you said, with the one example, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it made me think of, yeah, like parents bringing their little kids into the liquor store. Um, I wonder if there's some kind of um, subconscious. What's the term? Uh, like if it sticks in your mind, like oh, this is it's normal to be around alcohol when I'm young, and I don't, it's some it. I guess the thought isn't fully formed in my mind, but it made me think of that.
Yeah.
So hopefully, anybody who still fights for underage content can be reasonable enough to listen to that and say, "All right, well, yeah, I guess." Although I doubt hearing the words of two random guys in the community saying something is really going to
Yeah.
change.
If
Like,
they're,
wait,
yeah.
underage content was good. Now that I heard these two
Oh,
scrandies,
yeah.
it's nope. It's I'm
Such
done with
great
it. But
argument. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, who knows? Just
Who knows?
keep
Yeah, the
pushing.
hope is totally. The hope is, yeah, like enough people get it, then the people who are doing it will be dissuaded and
Yeah,
so on and so on. But yeah, no, it's always going to be tough. Like I said, I think a lot of it just comes down to people not knowing any better. They're like,
right,
I'm 16, I want to write about like a 16-year-old, and they just don't know, right?
right.
That's an issue. And if they're not on like Lucky Fish forums where you don't get like lambasted for it instantly, you're just gonna be doing it. And you're gonna keep doing it, and until someone points out like, "Hey, you're sexualizing minors, and that's inappropriate," and frankly, just kind of disgusting for a lot of
Yeah,
us. So please stop.
yeah.
Uh,
I mean, I
so
guess
yeah,
perhaps the biggest argument against it is if you get caught doing anything with kids and you go to jail, you're gonna the other people think you're the worst and they will kill you. So
yes, that's a extreme. If you were to do stuff in real life,
right,
obviously, yeah, your life is ruined. Um, and there's like obviously arguments to be made about how brutal the system is for people who are pedophiles
but I like
who
that.
arguably have a mental illness and things, and who need like help and therapy not to be murdered. But at the same time, it's like these are some of these realities that kind of exist at the moment.
Yeah,
Um, but I guess if none of like that sways people, think about it from like a maybe a business perspective, and that if you want people to like your stories, they're not gonna like underage content as much as they are stuff with like 18-year-olds and up and all these other even older. Like when we talked about Lucy and Daniela, we got excited about the prospect of like 40-year-old characters or something,
mm-hmm.
like these untapped areas
Yeah,
in the community. So yeah, if you want to be popular,
hmm.
you want people to like you, don't do underage content.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. There's just something. I don't know how anybody can have the space in their brain for minors when they're just the most the of age women are exist. That's
Yeah,
I guess that's what it comes down to.
totally.
Um,
Totally.
it
Yeah,
does make it a little difficult when you are underage and you're trying to
yeah.
find
And
content. But
yeah, in that
try
case,
and
yeah,
accept.
just
No,
be excited that yeah,
yeah,
like you get to dream about older women,
yeah.
and isn't that
This is
the
what you have to look
ideal
forward to,
for vanilla people? Yeah.
and that
So,
number one rule in this community: if you're under 18, don't say how old you are.
yeah.
That'll get you kicked out right away.
Yeah. And it's worth noting, of course, that many sites have rules against underage content
Right.
too. So
Yep.
if you're like, I'm still not swayed, be like, well, do you want to be on these boards, don't do underage stuff. Like,
Yeah.
simple as that.
Yeah. If you want to have a social life, if you want to have a life at all, if you want to have a life online, don't associate with minors sexually. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything that you'd like to discuss that we have not talked about?
No, I think we were quite exhaustive in our discussion
That's what I was
of the
hoping for.
community. It was great.
And
No,
you?
definitely, it was wonderful.
Awesome.
I think we nailed a lot. Hopefully, people come out of this with some deeper insight and appreciation into the community. And if not, hopefully you just go and check out all my stories.
Yeah,
Cool with that,
absolutely.
too.
First stop is Lucy and Daniela, then YWNR, then everything else.
All right, I'll take it. Seems like a good-
I mean, that should come as no surprise coming from me.
Sure, yeah. That's a good reading order, I think.
Yeah.
The order that they came out to. Interesting.
Awesome. Well, thank you once again for coming on, Hans. It's always a pleasure and a highlight of my week to talk to you.
Yeah, always an honor to be on. Love it. Can't wait for the next episode I'm on. It'd be great.
Probably the next episode I do you'll be on. It depends. All right, so this has been another episode of the Best Book Club. I really got to start writing these endings out. I've got down writing the intro and notes, but I gotta do the ending. But until I do, it's been another episode, another wonderful episode. Let me know how you feel about it. Let me know what you want to hear discussed. If you have any stories, ideas, themes, people you'd like me to talk to, if you'd like to come on, let me know. Give me feedback on how you think I'm doing, and I will catch you on the next episode. Thanks for listening.